The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we will cover Austin FC's Leagues Cup loss to FC Juarez. We will answer some listener questions with new friend of the show, Michael Lahoud. And then we'll also talk about some other bits of Austin FC news and what things look like for the rest of the season. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I am staying in the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Denver, which is the same hotel I stayed at in April of 2021 when 250 or so of us came up here to watch Austin FC defeat Colorado Rapids for the first club win. We saw Diego Fagundes score the first goal. Andy Lockname bought us all pizza and beer in a bar somewhere afterwards. They got 2:30 in the morning. I ended up riding like a luggage cart with the ensigns that only really remember through photos. So it is a little bit different of a trip, but there's a lot of great nostalgia here. So that's kind of my travel experience. You also had some time visiting. Did you go to St. Louis last week?
I was in St. Louis. I just got back yesterday. I went with my family. We've been doing Chicago Cubs-based trips because my dad has been a big Cubs fan for a long time. And now that we're all in phases of life where traveling is a little bit easier, we've been traveling to different places to see the Cubs play. So we went to St. Louis. Nice town. The stadium is really, really nice. I would recommend going to Busch Stadium for anybody who enjoys a baseball game. A little bit surprised at certain moments of the day where you're like, oh, we'll just go to this part of town and there'll be stuff happening. Then realizing a little bit spoiled by living in Austin, where they're just like, whatever exists is open most of the day and there's people doing it all the time. Not necessarily the case in every city in America, I learned, where it's like, oh no, nothing in this part of town opens until 5. Like, oh no. Okay, well, I guess we'll like walk around and look at some closed stores or whatever. But all in all, a good trip.
And you did not find the Kip Keller statue anywhere on the campus of St. Louis University, which is probably the most disappointing part of the trip for you?
Spent a lot of time in the circumference of the St. Louis University campus. Not a single sighting of the statue. Don't know where they put it.
It's very disappointing. That should be corrected. They probably have a building in his family's name at some point, given what we know about the Keller family.
I did see, we walked past St. Louis University High School at one point, and we all learned when Kip Keller was drafted that the SLU mascot is the Billikens. SLU High School's mascot is the Junior Bills.
Oh, that's nice. Did we learn what a Billiken was?
I don't know how, I'm sure other people were talking about this when Kip got drafted, but a Billiken is like some weird doll, like a good luck charm doll that was popular in the early 1900s. Apparently SLU had a coach of some sport that I didn't actually look up that looked like this doll. And so the fans started calling the team the Billikens. And then the school eventually took it on as their official nickname, which is the doll is very strange. Look up a picture of it. But B, even weirder that a school just like named their mascot off of like a licensed product that was for sale.
It is super weird. And thus ends the Midwestern education part of the Moon Tower Soccer podcast.
What we're best known for.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get into some news that we more or less knew. Last week when we recorded, we again got hit by the Anthony Precourt green smoke curse on Tuesday when the show came out. But again, like many of the signings, this was not a surprise because the news was out. Matt Hedges becomes official. Austin FC announced on Tuesday the club acquired Matt Hedges via trade with Toronto FC. In exchange, Toronto received up to $475,000 in GAM. So no 2023 GAM, $375,000 in 2024 GAM, and up to an additional $100,000 in 2025 GAM, conditioned on the player's roster status. And then he also signed a new contract that will keep him with Austin through the end of 2024 with options for 2025 and 2026. So with these details, does that change what you think about the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I said on the last show that I thought this was good value already, and the reports were $500K. We didn't know any of the other details. I think with these new details, this is an even better deal. Just the fact that it's 375K of next year's money up front. And so that maybe gives us some money to spend that we didn't necessarily have of this year's money to spend. And then also like the 2025, the extra 100,000 is only if we want to keep him, essentially. And so I think all of that considered, like this is a great deal to get a guy of his caliber for 375K. Like to get anybody from abroad, you're paying way more than that. The salary is probably going to be higher than that to get someone as good as him. So I really like the money of this deal.
Yeah, but the deal only being guaranteed through the end of next season also gets good because that alleviates some of the concern about having like an old guy on a long-term deal that ties up a lot of cap space.
Yeah.
So the window closes on August 2nd. We'll get into this part with Mike Lahoud about whether to expect other deals or not. So I think we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. You wanted to talk about the effect it had on Brandon Craig, or how great Brandon Craig like ties into this whole. I expect Brandon Craig is probably not going to see a lot of the field now, given this deal as part of it. But like, what else do you want to share on that?
Well, yeah, I think that's true. I think it does mean Brandon Craig is very unlikely to play for Austin FC very much at all this season. And what I wanted to talk about is like, I don't understand why people are so like, not a lot of people. I think some people are so upset about that fact. I think like, I understand like a play your kids movement, like develop the youth, but like Brandon Craig is not ours to develop. Like we have no responsibility to develop him as a player. That's Philadelphia's job. If they think it's best for him to come and be on loan in Austin for the chance of getting some minutes, that's their decision. That's Brandon Craig's decision. Like it's not Austin's job to develop another team's youth players.
Especially a player that's definitely not going to come back, right? I mean, he's definitely a Philadelphia player.
Yeah, Philadelphia is not letting us have this kid. He's a really high prospect. They're hoping to sell him for millions to Europe one day. That is their plan for this kid. So like, if he's not the guy to help us win a game right now, today, that's the only decision to make. Like, is Brandon Craig the best option to help us win this game? If the answer is no, don't play him. We do not have any other responsibility. If he was ours and we were looking to develop him for the future, if we were going to sell him for millions of dollars in the future, my answer would be slightly different there, but it's not. He's not ours. So I don't understand the hand wringing about poor Brandon Craig. Like I feel bad for the kid, but from an Austin FC perspective, this is fine. I'm not worried about it.
It's just business, right? And given outcome, there's no cup matches left for him to maybe get some random mop-up minutes in. So yeah, I'm fine with that going on. And so the corresponding move that was made is Austin exercised. This is still right. You only get one buyout per season.
Correct.
And
the only thing that changed is you can use it midway. You can use it through the end of the second transfer window, whereas before you had to use it before the season started.
So Austin uses this on Amro Tarek. I believe 66 minutes of playing time, all against Violette. Directly responsible for a banger of an own goal. Sort of negligently responsible for maybe all three goals. I mean, in some way, if I remember right. People
talk about the own goal. That is the third worst thing he did in that game.
Okay. That was my memory too. I mean, that was dramatic, but yeah, it was a really, really bad game. Because I remember at the time we were talking about like, did he have a worse game against Violette or Kip versus St. Louis? I think we both agreed that like that was
Tarek
the worst
all day.
It was the worst. So worst player performance in the history of the club, I think, at this point. Is that pretty safe to say?
Yeah, I think so. And I know a lot of people were asking, like, why wait so long to do this? If like he had been banished, you knew he was gone anyway. Like, why wait so long? And I think the answer is like it's about like getting all the puzzle pieces into place. So we've talked about like injuries, losing Claudio Reyna, hiring a new sporting director. There's a lot of moving pieces that like we kind of thought Rodney Redis was going to be on the way out. There was talks of Alex Ring being on the way out. You kind of want to keep all options available until you know you need them. And so I think we get to this point. Okay, we definitely have Matt Hedges on the line. Like this is going to happen. Now let's execute this buyout. Otherwise, like let's keep him. Let's not pay a guy to go away and then realize like we have 5 center back injuries and we we have to put him back in. Like, okay, we have a guy to replace him. We need this roster spot. Let's use it now. And I think that's why they waited.
Yeah, and then and they waited to the last minute, right? Because it had to be used by Wednesday. So it's
right.
Just like exploring all the options available. You mentioned that Hedges 2024 money adding some flexibility. So Austin FC also made a trade with LAFC. So Austin traded an international slot for 2023, $475,000 in 2024. GAM, which goes a long way toward making up a lot of the money that was spent on Hedges and gives Austin a lot of flexibility. So that seems like a good move too.
Yeah, we talk about with Mike Lahoud later about like what we expect to see for the rest of this transfer window, all 1 day that's left of it, 2 days that's left of it. I think this move is a bit of a look into that. The fact that we're trading a 2023 international roster spot for 2024 money, it's saying like, we don't want the money now. We want the money next year. We don't need this roster spot, so you can have it. Like it's essentially saying like, we're not going to do a ton this year. We're going to wait for 2024. Let Rodolfo Borrell get a clean slate, some enough resources to actually do something with it, and let him do his work then. And right now we're done for now, we think. And so we're just going to do what we can with what we have. And then hopefully Borrell can make something better of it in 2024.
Yeah, just another little point to make around that is that specifically is just a 2023 slot. Like these international slots revert back to the original team,
right?
When the year's over. So Austin's not doing anything to hamstring sort of future flexibility with this kind of move. It's one other thing you found. We were going to talk about this last week and didn't. Was like, can Miami sign all these guys that we've heard of, and Austin can only afford Matt Hedges? And you found, I think it was an article maybe on Twitter. Maybe it was an article that was posted on Twitter from somewhere else that kind of went into a little bit of what Miami was able to do and sort of how they were more or less able to pull it off, like in compliance with the current roster rules.
Yeah, I won't go into all of it. I'll post this tweet thread in the notes and listeners can go in and find it. But it's from Austin Robillard, a guy who covers Inter Miami. And he explains all the different mechanisms that he thinks they're using to get all these guys into place. And so he explains it all, and like theoretically, my Inter Miami can fit these guys into into the rules essentially to sign all these guys. Granted, I said theoretically. They theoretically only had 3 DPs a couple years ago when they're paying players
right, when they really had
$5 million. Yeah. And so, like, excuse me if I'm not taking Inter Miami's word for it, but theoretically they could fit all these guys into the spot. Whenever you add like the Luis Suarez rumors into it, that gets a little bit fuzzy at that point. But it is theoretically possible. And I've had people say like I don't buy it. You said like Austin doesn't have the money, but Inter Miami does have the money. It's like, no, we had the same space to work with as they did. Like, Emiliano Rigoni is our Sergio Busquets.
Right.
Like Alex Ring is our Jordi Alba. Like we had the same opportunities as them. Granted, they have some advantages based on who their owners are, where this team is located, the notoriety of that location that European players want to come and live in. Like other markets don't have that advantage, and that's a reality of it. But as far as the opportunities available to sign certain players at certain contract numbers, like Austin has those opportunities as well, and we did a bad job with them.
Yeah, well, it's not even Austin didn't spend the money, right? Austin spent the money. It was just Austin did not spend the money well. It'll be super interesting when I guess it'll be next spring now before we see the MLS roster, the MSPA roster numbers. Is that right? So we won't have any.
They'll release a
there's a late season
well.
update. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fall update will be interesting to see like where those guys all sit in terms of what they make.
Another piece of transfer news: Jackson Walti was traded to Colorado Rapids 2 for an unspecified amount of money. What is there to say about this one? I mean, Jackson Walti started probably like half the games for Austin FC 2. I think he's a guy, as I think Mike Crignola put it, he's like, I don't remember exactly the words, but he's saying like Walti's probably like the crunchiest of the guys.
He's the most Colorado team. Of the guys, yeah. Right? Yeah.
So he's going to fit in well up in Denver. as far as the play goes, like Walti, he seemed like a nice guy. I liked his game, really simple game, but like at his age, his abilities, like he's never going to be an MLS player. And so for whatever reason, a trade became available. I'm fine with this trade. We've got Alonso Ramirez has been starting more often at the six lately. I think he's younger, has a higher upside. Then we've got Bobosi Bironga and Steve Louis Jean kind of filling at that spot. We have Irvin Torres kind of coming up, can play in those same roles. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what brought on this move, but I'm hoping it means like some of our younger guys with brighter futures can get more minutes at that spot.
Yeah, just clear some availability for them. Yeah, I think people enjoyed like seeing video of Jackson Walti working a grill, and that was basically everybody's attraction to him, and like not necessarily about him as a player. So this is the kind of move that is like barely worth discussing. I think we can move on from it.
Highlights from the recent Efecito match. I landed at halftime, watched half of the second half on my phone in the Uber home from the airport, so I didn't get to see a lot of it. But one thing that I mean, the game ended 4-0 in favor of Austin FC against the LA Galaxy 2. So a good performance overall. But I think one thing that stood out was by the end of the game, Austin FC had 4 academy products on the field at the same time, with Micah Burton, who started and scored the first goal. Who else? Anthony Deanda came on late in the game. Brian Ariano came on, and Irvin Torres. So all 4 of those guys were on the field at the same time. This is the future we hoped for, is Austin FC Academy products playing for the second team, doing that for a couple of years. And hopefully one day we'll see them play for the first team. But that was really exciting to me.
Yeah. And then Burton and Ariano both picked up goals. So like not only they were on the field, but they were contributors to the overall performance, and it was strong showing against LA Galaxy 2. And it's good to see some of those guys get. Micah hasn't been on the score sheet in a while, so it's good to see him get back.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we have a lot to get to. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get back with the FC Juarez recap, and then I understand if y'all don't want to listen to us cover a loss, stick around for the Mike Lahoud segment. This is a lot of fun, really good. We've already recorded it, so we already know it's good. So at the very least, listen to that part of the show because it's great. Hang tight. We'll be right back. When no one is around. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 a year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per person per year. You'll pay none of those bank fees with Amplify Credit Union. It also works out to like 45 kosher hot dogs at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Oh my gosh, you could just eat yourself sick with that. Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower. All right, let's jump into the last Leagues Cup game for Austin FC of 2023. I see in the notes, Jeremiah just put, should we just copy and paste from the Mazatlan show? Yeah, because your headline is Austin controlling the game from the first stretch. Mazatlan, whereas struggling to gain momentum, system seemed to be working. Austin did show enough urgency, and going to the half, things turned, which is pretty much exactly how it happened against Juarez also. Yeah, I think they're not exactly the same game as for like the reasons why these things happened, but the same things did happen. Like Austin, I thought Austin was stronger. They were dangerous, and they actually converted. I mean, that was the difference, right? Against Juarez in the first half as opposed to Mazatlan. It's like for the first 30 minutes, I felt like this was going to be a fairly dominant performance. And it's just like the game got weird, man. It just did not turn out to be that way.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I was in St. Louis. I didn't get to watch this game live. We were out and about doing family stuff. And I was not going to be the guy on vacation with my family, just looking at my phone the whole time. So we watched the first like 15 or 20 minutes on my phone and then put it away. And I was like, I felt really good. I was like, Austin's looking great. Like they look dominant in this match. I think we're going to pull this one out. I saw the first goal and then saw the second goal. I was like, okay, that's unfortunate, but like I feel like Austin's still going to win this game. Turn it off, checked back towards the end of the game, 3-1. I'm like, what happened here? Don't understand. And so we get that first goal. What minute was that? Sorry, I'm a little bit unorganized here.
That's 23. Before that, let's talk about the lineup because there was lots of questions. There's lots of questions about like should Danny and Sebastian play? What is Austin going to do like with Giassi and Maxi Ruti both unavailable? And Austin ended up rolling out like the best, strongest starting 11 available players Austin had. So it's Stuver, Gallagher, Keller, Cascante, and Lima, Pereira and Wolf, Redis, Fagundes, and Finlay, and then Sebastian Drusi kind of as a false nine up front. Would you have played any other lineup than that, trying to pick up a result?
No, I don't think so. I think that's what yeah, I mean, I think that's what you put out. And I saw a lot of the pregame graphics. Again, why nobody should ever put any stock in anything a pregame graphic tells you is they all had Rodney Redez as the 9. And I was like, maybe they'll do that, but I really think it's going to be Driussi there. And when they came out, it was. They moved Fagundes inside into that Driussi role, had Redez on the left, Finley on the right, and then Driussi was playing a false 9. And I get a little bit annoyed whenever people say false 9 when they're really just playing 9 and they're just like playing striker, but it's a guy who doesn't always play striker. And so they call it a false 9. Driussi was playing false 9. He was dropping into midfield and kind of playing a similar role to what he normally does. Which I mean, I thought was okay. I thought it did hurt us at times not having a true striker in there, but it felt like they made the most of what they could with it in those moments. And like I said, looked like the dominant team for the first 30 minutes or so.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it worked. The first goal is the Ethan Finley goal. Really well worked play by Owen Wolf, who after not looking great for a few weeks, I think he had a really strong performance. He's the best player in the midfield in this match. And
well, for a stretch of the game, I think that stopped being true.
You think so?
It was up and down. I thought he had some really poor moments, but also had some really good moments and those were throughout the game. He had some good moments on the half turn where he would receive between lines and turn and drive, which I think is a thing that he's good at whenever he has the confidence to try it. But some other moments where he gives the ball away, he tries that and it doesn't come off. So some poor moments, but yeah, I think that's fair to say he had at least a stronger performance than we've seen as of late.
Okay. From him. And I was going to say comparatively to like the rest of the performances on the night, he's compared to the other 10 guys, he's pretty good. Because like I feel like Danny was exceptionally not good in the midfield in this one. So yeah, so it's 23 minutes in. Austin generates several chances. I think Michael talked about it was like 8 shots. I think in the first half that Austin picked up, but Ethan converts this one. He had another strong performance. Again, had some great commentary after the match about how he didn't really care since it was in a loss. So it's good to see that kind of leadership. But Austin's up 1-0, but it does not last for very long. It lasts for about 13 minutes. And Sebastian Saucedo gets the game tire unassisted to tie it at 1. I don't remember this goal very well.
It was a weird one. So it was a free kick from wide left. Saucedo plays like a low curling ball, like just beyond Austin's defensive line. So they set up their offside line, like around the 18-yard box. He plays this curler like in through the box just behind there. And I think the idea was hoping that like one of his teammates would run past the line and be able to get a foot on it and catch Stuver kind of off guard. And so after nobody ever touches it and it just rolls into the far post.
This is the one that he's okay. Yeah. This is the one that Stuver reacts like super late to, right? When it was too late for anything for him to do anything. Yeah.
And so Stuver's complaining to the assistant referee saying that number 24 Ortega, I think, is a center back. He seems to be like their Julio Cascante. He's like the guy they aim for on set pieces. Stuver's saying like this guy was offside. This goal shouldn't count. And Adrian Healy on the broadcast was saying like it shouldn't be offside because he didn't block Stuver's view. And I disagree with that part of what Adrian was saying, because although that is where you most often see that rule be applied, the rule is not that the defender offside blocks the keeper's view, is that the player offside is involved in the play. And so why Stuver freezes in the middle of the goal there is because he sees that guy running down the middle of the box. And I think he's thinking, okay, this guy's going to try to deflect it. So I'm going to stay central, get set, and get ready for a reaction save. And when that touch doesn't come, then he's out of position. And it looks like he just doesn't, like he's in the wrong spot, when really I think he's waiting for that touch. That being said, after it becomes very clear that guy's not going to touch it, he still reacts pretty late to what's happening and is unable to get down in time. And another caveat on top of that, rewatching it, I don't think the guy was offside anyway.
That's what I got out of it from rewatching it. It's like Brad was really heated. We could, where we were sitting, we could hear like yelling at the official. But yeah, I don't think he was offside. So I think Brad was just wrong in that moment.
It was really close. Like if that guy's 2 inches forward, I think they should call that play, even though he doesn't touch it. He's not blocking Brad's vision. He's involved in the play. I think they should have called it, but he still may have been by a centimeter, but the fact that it didn't get called in the field, that was never going to get overturned on VAR. And so I think the goal stands and is fair. It's like a touch of Brad reacting a little bit late, but just a little bit of bad luck as well.
Yep. So we go to the half, 1-1. And the second half was not good for Austin. Let's see. Was Aitor Garcia makes it 2-1. Man, and those goals came in quick succession too, if I'm right. Yes. So the second goal to make it 2-1 comes at 62. Goal to make it 3-1 comes at 69. And then Austin's just like flat and dead, and there's no hope of a comeback after that.
Yeah, it's the second Juarez goal. Lima gets beat, like dribbled past on the left-hand side. So the team does a good job of kind of recovering and closing that down, but leaves the backside open. They find Chaco Rodriguez on that side. Gallagher closes him down and has him 1v1. And he tries to play like a low, hard ball into the 6. I think like as the ball was intended, Austin probably had this covered, but it bounces off of Gallagher's leg, falls to a wide open Aitor Garcia in the middle of the 6-yard box, and he finishes it. And so the deflection puts it into a spot that was probably covered otherwise, but it's also a guy who has shown multiple times in this game that he's very dangerous, and he's standing unmarked in the 6-yard box, which is not a good thing. I think it's hard to place, like watching back, I was watching like the defensive rotation, who's marking who's where. And I think it's hard to place the blame on any one player on this goal, but it's, again, and we've said this about a lot of Austin FC goals over the last couple of years, Jeremiah, where it's one of those where slightly better awareness, slightly better positioning from like 2 or 3 guys probably prevents this goal. But so it's like not one guy's fault. It's kind of everybody's fault. And that just happens a lot with this team. And so Austin FC's down. They start pushing. They get caught out in transition. That's how the last goal scored. I think like Lima and Cascante probably should have done a little bit better, just like facing up the 1v1 defending with Aitor Garcia on that one. But it is still a product of being caught in transition because they're pushing.
Yep.
And I saw a lot of folks online talking about, we'll get into kind of some Wolf out stuff with Mike Lahoud later. I saw a lot of people online saying how this was Wolf's fault for not changing things up once Juarez started playing better. And we've criticized on this show Wolf's game management, but I disagree with that sentiment in this situation. Austin was dominant for 20 some odd minutes. They get like a slightly unlucky goal. Juarez gets some energy. They start coming out, and Austin like panics and they stop executing. They aren't picking good passes. They're just like not making good decisions, not executing when they get into good spots. And so like I understand how you see them the game shift and you think like, okay, we need to change something, but it's like what they were doing was working. And so it's hard to say like, okay, that stuff that you were doing that was working, don't do that anymore. Do something different. It's like, no, just keep doing the thing you're doing, but do it good. And that was the problem to me here. And so like I think in the Mazatlan game, it was an energy and focus and effort thing. This was a decision making and execution thing. And like them panicking a little bit whenever that first goal did go in and kind of losing their composure.
Yeah, it was just a weird performance all the way around. If one of the things that like after the game, I was trying to think through like how are we gonna like what things are we gonna talk about that are positive, and a lot of guys I wanted to see get in the game played. That was kind of fun. Like Alex Ring comes back, Matt Hedges to get some action.
Alex Ring in the midfield.
Yeah, Alex Ring in the midfield. CJ Fodre finally sees a little first team action. Like nobody really covered themselves in glory, but it was good to see those players get some time. It's just frustrating overall. What did you think about these quotes? Because I think like both the goal scorers, right? Both for Juarez, both Garcia and Saucedo talked about sort of, I don't know, grit, like the league game ABC's needing it more, and like sort of expectations. Those came up from both those guys. Do you read anything to that? Do you think there's truth to it?
I think they're probably right. Like the like Juarez got punched in the mouth early. We didn't capitalize on it. Weren't able to get a goal. They get a goal that's like a little bit lucky, and they get energized and capitalize on the rest of the game. And once, like, I'd say the third goal was like the only one where there's not like an element of luck to it. But like the third one comes from the game state. And so it's like, okay, things happen. Like there's an element of randomness in this game. There always will be, and there always has been. But whenever things break your way, you have to capitalize on those moments. And Juarez did, and Austin panicked.
Yeah. So do you think? I guess my question about the mentality thing. Do you think there's just like a mentality between the leagues? Because that was the narrative that they were pushing. It's like we're on the road, like we wanted it more. Like, is there something to that?
I think so. Yeah.
Easy. It's just something that's easy to say after you've already won the match.
I mean, it sounds like a platitude, but I think there's truth to it. Like, I think there is. Like I think definitely in the Mazatlan game, like there was a team who was fighting the whole game, and there was another team who wasn't. And the team who was fighting was not Austin FC. And I think in this game, there's like even like the gamesmanship kind of stuff. There's a moment where there's like Austin is breaking. I think this was when it was still 1-1 or maybe 2-1. Austin's kind of breaking, and there's like a bad foul in the midfield. The Juarez defenders realize they're in a like kind of in a tough spot. And so they do their best to kind of slow up play, get in guys' ways, where Austin could have like taken a quick touch, start play back fast, don't give them a chance to like slow play down and get ahead. And Juarez had the mindfulness enough to say like, okay, we're in a tough spot. We need to slow the game down, stand in front of the ball, get in a fight, do whatever you need to do to keep them from taking this quick free kick. And there are little moments all night where that happened. And this is a thing we see in like CONCACAF Champions League, right? Where the rest of CONCACAF seems to have that part of the game really well honed, and a lot of MLS teams don't. And I think this is a part of like this Austin team specifically, where I think Austin has quite a few like Boy Scouts on the team, where they're like the work hard, do everything right, and you'll get rewarded for it. Where that's true sometimes, but you also need to know when to like play with the rules a little bit. Like, I don't want to say cheat, but use a little bit of the dark arts, and like that's part of the game too. And you have to be good at that stuff too. And I think Austin's been taken advantage of from that standpoint several times over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's sweet. This game's like where you miss a little bit of Felipe and you miss a little bit of Ruben, who sort of had that part of their game. And Maxi, to some extent, is like one of the guys who still does that somewhat in Austin, who was on the performance, who was on the pitch either. Are there any other individual performances that we haven't covered that you want to dive into?
You already mentioned him. Ethan Finley, I thought, had the best night out of anyone still not a perfect game, but just the guy's a warrior. Like he fights so hard, and whenever he can combine that with like an on night skill wise going forward in the attack, like he's a really good player in this league. And so aside from that, like I think it was kind of hit and miss from everybody. Austin playing really confidently, doing really well in the first part of the game, and then I kept talking about them panicking, and it's like they kind of lost that confidence, and some of the like the flare stuff, the little 1-2s that were coming off, those stop. I think they kind of start second guessing themselves, start hesitating a little bit, start picking the wrong passes, playing nervous passes that don't come off, and that's how the rest of the game was.
And what do you think about this take? I think it's from Kevin Morris that like the biggest thing Sebastian Driussi up top is missing is Sebastian Driussi underneath him, freeing him up to like make things happen. Because like Diego did not have a great match. If Diego had been better, like maybe Driussi's better, like that combination just didn't work out overall. And yeah, on a different night where Diego's contributing more, maybe Sebastian is also able to perform better.
Yeah, I think that's true. And like in fairness to Fagundes, like he's just a way different player than Driussi is. And so to have like a real striker and to have like Driussi, who's kind of I've heard someone call it a 9.5, where it's like he's not quite a 9, he's not quite a 10. He's somewhere in between those. And Driussi's really good at operating in those spaces. And like Fagundes, even if he had a great game, he's not going to play that way. And so if Driussi's doing that as the 9, you need someone else to be a real 9 and do the other stuff that he was doing. And so he would pull out and do some of this other stuff, and then there'd just be a hole left behind where he was. And I feel like early on, Rodney Redes was doing a good job of getting into those spaces and occupying that space whenever we were getting into dangerous areas. But once the passes started coming off, once the decision-making went down, it didn't matter because we weren't getting the ball into those areas. So it didn't matter if anybody was there or not.
Yeah, and Rodney had a really good chance early on too that he didn't convert. I think was one of those goals change games moment that could have set the tone for the night.
Yeah,
it didn't happen.
Yeah, open goal, and he found the defender.
Exactly. So I think overall, so now Austin has no match until August 20th in St. Louis. Also, no time off. I think the coach and Ethan Finley both very clear after that Austin went straight back to work this week without a lot of free time. And Wolf talked, I think, to Phil West about expecting to have at least one closed door scrimmage in the interim to kind of keep the guys sharp against another team that gets knocked out of the tournament. It's like, overall, how do you feel about this? And like, how much effect does this have on the rest of the Austin FC season?
I mean, just from an injuries perspective, I think this could be a positive. I don't think you should ever intentionally have 2 or 3 weeks off, but when it's given to you, take advantage of it. Get Matt Hedges worked into the team. Try to like spend some time working on some things maybe you didn't have time to work on throughout this highly congested season. Hopefully you get at least one of the strikers back. Hopefully you get some of these other injured guys back. Rigoni should be coming back around the end of this time of the break. It gets you closer to Vicenen coming back. So I'm hoping they can get better, get healthy during this time. Because when we come back like that, we talk about most of the MLS season not mattering. This is the part that matters. Like, this is when they need to be good. And so, do everything you can to make sure that you're good in the part where you need to be good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because this is, it's like St. Louis, Dallas, Seattle are the next 3 matches. So you need to be healthy and good because those are all Western Conference matches and all against contenders. And we've talked about how fast, still at this point, like you can go up and down the table really quickly depending upon results. And this could be a really strong or really poor run of form for Austin coming up.
All right. Anything else before we go on to our interview with Michael Lahoud?
No, let's get in the interview. It's like, that was super fun. I'm glad we got to do it. I'm glad Mike gave us his time.
Yeah. All right. Hang tight. We'll be right back with that.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Covert Ford. The Coverts have been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community and the official automotive partner of Austin FC.
Right now, Covert has a deal on a 2023 Ford F-150 XL Super Crew, stock number 2230076. The MSRP is $53,815, but with dealer discounts and package savings, it can be yours for only $45,299 plus tax, title, and license. Also, with approved Ford credit, you get it for 0% APR over 36 months or 3.9% over 60 months.
If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertford.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Thanks to Sage Wilson Realty, we'll be giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming, this is now very in the future upcoming match. So fill out the form in the show notes and enter for your chance to win.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty. If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, our guest today is a former professional soccer player, a current professional soccer pundit. You will know him as the former Austin FC TV analyst, and more recently may have seen his appearances on the CBS Golazo Network as well as several other places. It's Mike Lahoud. Michael Lahoud. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, I just asked him right before we started which he preferred, and he said all of his loved ones call him Michael, and then I called him Mike on air. So apologies, but thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. This has been a long time coming. Been a big admirer of the Moon Tower pod. You can add the government to that list. Whatever the government calls me, I go by that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talked a little bit about the stuff that we've known you from in the past and the stuff you're doing now. Now that you're not doing the Austin FC stuff full time, what all are you working on these days?
Man, yeah, you might as well call me the man with 400 jobs, because that's what I feel like I have this year. I still work with Austin FC just off the top, do a weekly studio show called Verde Lights with Adrian Healy, the voice of Verde, the legend himself. And we also do Matchday -1, which I think people watching or people listening in the pod will have heard of. We'll do Twitter Spaces as well. So still continuing in the Austin FC form. And outside of Austin FC, I've done a bunch with CBS Sports. They're doing a lot of big things. You've seen them in the Champions League with Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher, Micah Richards. This is the next best show coming in. No, I'm kidding. Those guys are world class. But I think I'd like to say we're the next best thing with the Golazo Network. I've recently done some studio appearances with them. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I've been going up each week, once a month, and been doing stuff on the show called Morning Footy. You might see a familiar name in Susanna Collins, Charlie Davies, Nico Cantar, Alexis Guerreros, Jenny Chu, and kind of a host of rotating people. And then last but not least, did some experiences with Box to Box, which is more for the soccer lovers, where you get into the tactics, you get into kind of the purity of the game.
Yeah, I got into the whole Golazo Network thing a little bit late, but I started digging into it a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, man, this is cool. Like this is what like I've been wanting soccer coverage in America to be for a long time. And you mentioned all of these names involved with it, people who are really good at their job, really fun to watch on TV. And I am always astonished how Alexis Guerreros got involved, like included in this group. I got to know him and his Cooligans co-host Christian Polanco a few years back when I was going to New York quite a bit. And like I just feel like, tell me if you think this is right. I always feel like he's like one sentence away from getting fired and not getting asked to come back.
Oh man, Alexis, I'll just say this. Alexis is unapologetically Alexis, and Alexis is unapologetically Brooklyn. In his words, I'm as Brooklyn as it gets. He's like the mayor of Brooklyn proud. And the one thing I'll say about Alexis, don't let the comedian tag fool you. The guy knows a lot about the game, and especially the women's game. There were a couple times where he would school me on certain things just to give me a little bit of stick, just to see if I knew my stuff. But he is the NWSL guru. Obviously knows his NYCFC just from his time with the Cooligans, but he's going to be one of the game changers in the industry. You just watch.
All right. Well, the plan for today's segment with you is going to be driven by our Patreon members. They sent in some questions, some mostly just about the team in general, some specifically for our guest, Michael Lahoud. But let's get started with this first one, Jeremiah.
Yeah. So this is from Robert Miller. It says, every time we lose, I see a sizable online contingent yell wolf out. Do you think this is reflective of the overall fan base?
Let's start with that. Let's start with that one.
Let's start with that one. Do you think this is reflective of the fan base, or are we all just too online and don't have perspective?
I think this is more reflective of how much we all love and care. And when Austin FC lose, it ruins our weekends. I know it ruins my weekends, and that's when you know you love a team. So you know you're a fan. It's hard to stay wolf out given the recent Major League Soccer performances. And I am always one to not make emotional decisions. I'm sure I've made a ton throughout my life. My wife will be the first one to tell me and call me out on it when I do. But I always think that it's kind of the voice of the minority when you hear wolf out, because those same people, when it's going well, when you find yourself in fifth place, those are the people that kind of sometimes waffle, and we're all guilty of it. I do it with different managers that I've seen and played under and, come across. But I think it's a bit premature to have said the wolf out. When you see the team in 12th place, Major League Soccer, it's a long season. And in my experience, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a team by its initial cover until you get to this time of year. When you get back into league play, and if it gets to late August, early September, that's when your team shows its true colors. And for Austin FC, there's a whole lot of firsts for this year, and it's been the growing pains. And I know that I've seen things about 2021. This feels like we've taken a step backwards. Let's be honest about the steps that we took forward last year. We were miracle workers. Sebastian Triusi, Diego Fagundes accounted for over 50% of our goals. It's almost like the sophomore slump that happens with players. And it's a testament to the collective effort of the group and the mentality of the veteran core that they're finding ways to win. And it's the veteran players that I think are going to be the ones to get the team to move forward.
Yeah, I wish I could remember who this was that posted this, but it was during one of the several like ebbs and flows of the wolf out movement. Someone on Twitter posted a poll, and it was like, are you hashtag wolf out, hashtag wolf in, or hashtag wolf in for now, or something along those lines. Like essentially the idea of the third choice was like, I'm kind of ambivalent. I think it's fine. I don't think he needs to be fired right now. And that choice won by a pretty wide margin. And so I think it is probably still the minority who are vehemently calling for his job at the moment, but it is a quite loud majority at the moment, or loud minority at the moment.
Yeah, no, and you see that throughout so many things. And I like to think that oftentimes, whether it's soccer or different things, it's usually the minority that bangs the drum the loudest, because let's look at the body of work. Josh Wolf was the head coach and still is the head coach, but was the head coach that did find a way to find Sebastian Triusi and put him in his best possible position in 2022. He was the head coach that got the best we've seen out of Diego Fagundes in probably the last 7-8 years, over the last 2 years. You still have to give credit to the head coach. Yes, players win and lose you games, but the coach has to put all the pieces together. And so far, what he's done last year and a bit of the miracle working that continues this year, you have to give him some level of credit because he is the man at the helm. And we can't just ignore the elephant in the room. Some of the off-field things that he's had to deal with, not a lot of coaches or any other coaches in the league have had to deal with to kickstart a season, especially as a young coach. So I'm very much wolf in, not just because Austin FC is my employee, but I love this club. I'm a fan of this club. And in my experience, I think it's always a bit harsh when there's an emotional reaction. And look, we all care, but when there's emotional reaction, I liken it to a wave. The wave goes up, and then the wave dissipates once results come.
The second part of Robert Miller's question was, when Väisänen comes back, who would be your two center backs? And with Austin getting Hedges, where does that leave Ring? I know for me, I think if we had to choose right now at this very moment, and we're only playing two center backs, I think I would choose Väisänen and Hedges. But my real answer is, like, when we have all three of them healthy, you play whoever's rested at the moment, whoever's playing well. Like, that's what a healthy team does, right? It's like you have competition, whoever's in form gets the minutes. Do either of you have any like other opinions on that, or would you pick a different two if we're playing two center backs?
Yeah, Jeremiah, I'd love to hear your input before I go.
No, I would think. I mean, those are my two for sure. But the way you phrased it, Landon, made me think maybe are you still toying with the idea that Josh goes back to three?
I mean, maybe
if you have Cascante, Hedges, and Väisänen available.
Yeah, I mean, because you have that option now. Like, you have you have three guys that you could put back there if you think either the personnel available on the other half of the field suits you best for it, what the other team is going to show you suits best for it. You have the option to do it. And the last several months have essentially been like, who is capable of playing center back? Okay, you're in.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think the one thing with Matt Hedges, and you've seen that with new players who have come in, unless your name is Sebastian Driussi, where you're so good, you're a DP, you walk into the lineup, and we've seen the benefit from day one, is Josh has always preached this patience process with new signings of, hey, they're going to have to get up to speed. They're going to have to learn the system. I think Matt, with all his experience, the one thing that I like about him, he's very adaptable. I played against him as a player. He's a leader. And Austin FC right now in the back line, Julio has stepped up significantly. But last year, what made Austin FC tick from back to front was having a veteran leader in your back line in the form of Ruben Gabrielson. Ruben's out this year. So if Matt Hedges wants to be that week in, week out starter for the remainder of the season, his leadership is what's going to be needed. In terms of ball playing, I give the edge to Leo because Leo's more comfortable. You see, with the Finnish national team, it's part of a bit of his repertoire. The one thing that I think will benefit this team in the long run, though, is getting a left-footed center back. So far, it's been all right-footed players, and I think teams start to scout that. And in games where they've succeeded, it's getting the ball to Julio and then finding Danny Pereira, and you break the press.
All right, well, we were talking about our only signing of this transfer window, Matt Hedges. Nicole Blair asked, do you expect any further news during this transfer window? So we're recording this the night of Monday, July 31st. Is it 2 more days? Do you all remember?
Wednesday. Yeah, the second is the day it closes. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're getting really close to the end. Are you guys expecting any other changes in the next day and a half?
I tell you what, I hope Anthony Precourt and the ownership are watching. There's a guy who's available on the market. His name is Mbappe. Get that guy, and Austin FC will win the MLS treble. No, realistically,
I thought you were about to announce yourself coming out of retirement.
Hey, I'm always available. Don't tell my wife. I'm always available, though. No, I would be surprised if there are more reinforcements, but never doubt the ownership. Never doubt the staff, because now that there's a sporting director and Rodolfo in there, that I think there could be a wrinkle. But right now, what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing anything as of late. That's not official news or unofficial news. But I think getting Matt Hedges is more the urgency of putting more solidity in that back line because of injuries.
That's kind of what we expected whenever Burrell was hired, right, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I expect that he's not going to have time to really have an influence on this window. And you don't want to hamstring his ability to make changes, like long-term build changes during the offseason when they will have a lot more flexibility by panicking and doing anything rash, during this window. So I could totally see a position where we kind of wait it out and see where we're at the end of the year, both in terms of the players and the coach, and then go from there.
The next question comes from Alex Mod. He says, once San Antonio FC is an accident, twice Violette is a coincidence, 3 times Chicago is a pattern, 4 times Mazatlan is a problem, and 5 times Juarez is a habit. Each of these games has specifics on why they win against Austin, but it has become a habit for the club not just to lose, but to put up substandard efforts in these external competitions. Like, what is the common thread between these games? Because they have been for different reasons. It's not the same thing every time. Michael, as a former player, what is the difference in this game and an MLS game? Like, what is the mentality as a player coming into these things, and what do you see is going wrong for Austin FC with that mentality aspect of it?
I think that, and you hit it on the head, of when you play cup competition, it's one game, you win or you go home. And you can tell very much by the teams who have their priorities in certain competitions versus the teams that are saying, hey, maybe we get something out of this. And I think, I'm not saying that the team is going into any game saying, oh, well, maybe we're not going to put as much effort. Very much the opposite. I think you see that through the course of 90 minutes. The effort is not lacking. I think the mentality shift is just, in my experience, teams that have things going on the MLS front tend to not do as well in the Open Cup tend to not do as well because in certain cup competitions, and we'll put an asterisk with Violette because that was something that I think everyone can hold their hand up involved in that game. That is not representative of Austin FC. It's not representative of the fan base. It's not representative of the standard that this team has put up so far to be in a competition like that. But in terms of every other competition, I think it's hard as a player to know where to put your energy if you're starting to climb the table. And it's just the human psychology of being a player. I know the teams that I always had success with in things like the Open Cup, if you look at where we were in the standings, you didn't want to look because we were playing for our jobs. We were playing for our lives. That there was a sense of urgency put in by the staff, by the coach saying, hey, if you don't make a run in this cup, there will be changes. And there's nothing like pressure that'll get the most out of you. Look at Chicago. Since they won that game at Q2 Stadium, they've kind of found a bit more life, usually away from home, and getting some of their players kind of a bit more confident. And that can be the catalyst for teams not doing well in the league to start finding a bit of confidence. That win or go home, that one-off, that's something that I think the San Antonio FC's, that's their World Cup final. And I think Austin FC coming off back-to-back away games, the DC win, you have the emotional highs, and then you have the emotional lows because it's so hard to get back up for maybe a team like that, which is in the USL. And the teams that have more standing in Major League Soccer and longer history, I'd say like your Seattle Sounders, which have done it on multiple fronts, your Portlands, which have done it on multiple fronts, maybe not last year, but there's something in the Pacific Northwest. I think they figured it out of how to do enough to get results. It's not about the aesthetics. I think Austin FC will become a major player in all different competitions when it becomes down to sacrificing maybe the aesthetics to go for the pragmatism, to just do whatever it takes to get the results. And this year, injuries really haven't helped the cause. It's not an excuse. It's a reality.
You mentioned teams in the Pacific Northwest. Portland specifically is a team that does not mind playing against the ball, and for that reason have been really good in knockout competitions. So I think that is probably part of the difficulty where Austin and Josh Wolf are pretty dedicated to their way of playing and don't really like to change it much. And so when going into this one game knockout, if a team goes super negative or if one play goes against you, you don't really have anything to fall back on. As far as the mental part of it, do you think there is like a responsibility for Josh Wolf and the coaching staff to motivate these players better for the games? Or do you think it's just like a freak thing that's happened 5 times in a row?
I think when it happens once, as you said, when it happens a few times, I think you start seeing a habit. And especially when it's happened with a core group that's been there, a predominant core group that's been there since day one. You know, there's been changes, but the majority of players that were there from 2000 or 2021, I want to say 2011, going back to when I played, but 2021 is the heart and the spine of the team. Yes, some attacking players have come and gone, but the majority of the players are still there. I think that that's still a soul-searching process for the club and for the staff and for the players. I'm one that I will always find it hard to put blame on coaches unless in terms of personnel, you just get it completely wrong. And look, coaches and players don't get results, and coaches and players do get result. But first and foremost, as a player, I always liked it better when you walked into a locker room after a result that didn't go your way, and the locker room and the players were the first ones to raise their hands and said, this is not good enough. And when I look throughout this team, I see a leader emerging in the form of Ethan Finley. Can't wait to talk about that guy's form, because what he's done on the field has been such a catalyst for this revival in Major League Soccer in terms of the season.
Well, this next question's from Elise. Maybe we'll just get into it here. This is about like with an up and down roller coaster of a season. What does that do to the mindset of the players? I think like Ethan Finley's comment when he was asked about scoring the goal in the loss of Juarez is like really, illustrative of that. It's like, how do you handle this like up and down year and sort of like getting back in the saddle and being ready?
I loved that Ethan Finley said that. That's brutal honesty. That shows me that that's a guy who's locked in. That's a guy who's not satisfied with losing to Juarez. And Juarez this year, I mean, they're what they've done in Liga MX has been impressive. Club America, Tigres, CONCACAF Champions League winners multiple times. They have Gignac. So they're no slouches themselves. They have a baller in Aitor Garcia, but it's always disappointing when you lose kind of handedly, and you were winning 1-0. It's not the first time we've seen Austin FC up a goal and dropping points at home. And I like it when I see frustration from players, especially veteran players. And I think that's someone who I would like Josh Wolf and his staff to really elevate more in a leadership position, to have him be one of the vocal leaders, emotional leaders, because it shows in his form and it's contagious. We see that with Sebastian last year. There's a reason why he's captain when things are hard. Sebastian was there for the rescue, just leading by example. Ethan's now doing that. Brad has done that in different times. Didn't have his best game, and he's the first one to admit it against Juarez. But we know what we can expect from Brad. At the end of the day, though, it's what you do on the field. We'll find out a lot about the run-in from this group when St. Louis is the next game on the docket at the end of the month.
All right. Well, this next, how are we doing on time here? Oh yeah, we should maybe move through these next ones a little quicker, Jeremiah.
Okay.
Next one is from Kerr and Kelly. They ask, would you trade Ring for another DP in the league, or trade Ring for a lesser player plus some GAM in order to let Burrell have some more money to spend in the offseason? So, Jeremiah, what are you taking out of those two options?
Oh, I would think. What? So we're assuming we have to let Ring go. Sorry, I'm not
Yeah,
doing very good.
that's the only option at the moment.
If I get rid of Ring, I'm replacing him completely with another designated player, because that's where teams can differentiate, is when their designated players are performing.
Yeah.
Go on.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think, like, at this point, this late in the transfer window, like, it's probably unlikely to see him go. And we've talked a little bit about all the weird stuff with losing the captaincy at the beginning of the season, having to play center back, that maybe he wanted to leave. At this point, it seems unlikely. We're thinking that he is probably at the end of at least his guaranteed contract at the end of this year. Mike, do you think there's any possibility that he still goes? And then if Austin were to try to, like, cash in on him, which of those two routes would you want to see them go?
I think whenever you have a designated player, if you're going to get rid or trade or try and cash in on them, you do it at the start of the window. That tells me that there's a strategy behind it. It's not just a reaction. And it tells me there's a unified front that's strategizing in congruence and in accordance with the sporting director. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, because you now have center backs that can play center backs. Alex Ring has played out of position. He's also recently dealt with injury woes throughout this season. He's getting a bit older, but in the run-in, you never know when you're going to have to rely on Alex Ring. That's a ton of experience that you'd be cashing and throwing out the window just for a gamble. I think that's too big of a gamble. The team is in 5th place, and I think you will need Alex Ring. Now, he's going to get more informed. Hopefully he gets more reps. Hopefully he gets more games with the run-in, and games coming fast, thick and thin. So I would keep Alex Ring and hope you get some big games, because say Austin FC do get in the playoffs. I think they will make the playoffs. You never know. Look at Johan Valencia starting games last year in the playoffs. Look at Musa Gite. You never know when you're going to have to rely on certain players. Musa Gite started the Western Conference Finals. This time last year, we weren't talking about Musa or thinking Musa would be a starter. Johan Valencia maybe played a handful of games. He contributed in the playoffs. He contributed at the very end of the season. Form ebbs and flows, and it's never the same group of players that start the season. Very rarely, I should say. It's never the same group that starts the season that ends it in big games.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it reminds me, I skipped over this part of Robert Miller's question earlier, but he said, with Hedges coming into the team, where does that leave Alex Ring? And my answer is hopefully in the midfield, right? Now that we do have cover at the back, like, he was only back there because he had to be. And so now that he's available to not be at center back, we've seen Owen Wolf's form dip a little bit over the last month or two. To have an option like Alex Ring to put back into the midfield to play as that 10 box 8 kind of player, like, that's a huge asset to have. And so I could see an argument for, like, if he's not in the plans for the future, he's going to walk away for free at the end of the season. I see the argument for cashing in on him, but I see probably a stronger argument for keeping him at this point. If Austin really is going to try to get a home game in the playoffs, make a run in the playoffs, like, Alex Ring could be a big part of that, just like you said.
Yeah, and I look at, when you get to playoff games, look at last year, what mattered most. Set pieces are the defining things. They're the thing that separate teams in the early rounds. They tend to separate teams as the pressure cooks up. Alex Ring, one of his strengths, taking and scoring set piece headed goals. In his tenure with Austin FC, he's one of the leaders. I think he's behind Julio Cascante in headed goals off set pieces with this current roster. That could be something that you'd be ruining if you cash in on a player like him right now, unless you can get some high value player, which I don't think teams are going to make that move. I think it's a big gamble of Austin FC do it. I don't see it happening. And I think we'll be looking back thinking, okay, that was a wise move to keep Alex Ring for his experience.
Well, our next question, this is something I wonder about too, and this you'll have the perspective on. So from Taylor Kopic, how does the string of injuries, this says rank among the worst of recent history, but like, you know, I'm an Austin FC fan. I did not follow the league until we got a team here. It's like, I don't have a lot of perspective on, I feel like 2022 Austin was very healthy overall, but like, is this a normal year? Is this an aberration? Is this somewhere in between? Like, how does sort of this injury run for Austin fit in terms of like what you can expect from regular MLS season?
I think this is the byproduct of it's year two was getting in the playoffs, and there is newness about it. And to your point, I think one of the things that we benefited from, and you see it throughout Major League Soccer and the teams that have success, is consistency in the lineup, is keeping players healthy. You get to build bonds, you get to build confidence. And this year, I think the injury plague has come from the fact that it's the first season where we've had to start earlier. We've had to prepare for a competition in the CONCACAF Champions League and a maiden voyage that didn't go our way. So now you're dealing with the emotional stress of that. The fan base isn't happy with that. The players have to deal with pressure that they've never faced before. And you start and stutter, inconsistency in the league, added pressure. And I can't just emphasize enough how there's a book that I remember reading called The Body Keeps the Score. And I wish I had read it earlier in my career. And it talks about how stress, your body, it stays within your body, within kind of the marrow, the bone marrow of your tissues and your fibers, and it breaks you down. So I think that the early start, the turnaround from an emotional season 2 in 2022, the letdown of being 90 minutes away from MLS Cup with Austin FC, going to LAFC and losing to the eventual champions and the better team on the day. But that wears on you to then turn around. I think that's what we've seen with the injury woes and the injury problems. So if you put that all together, the newness, we're still in year 3. It shows how much we've increased expectation from 2021 to get to this year. Like I said, I expect this team, I believe in this team, given what they've done to turn things around. I think the biggest focal point is now just keeping everyone healthy. They've shown that when their backs are up against the wall, they've shown it a couple of times that they have enough resolve to get through the slump of the the slump of the late spring months to then turn it around the summer months. The last 2.5 months of the season, that's where winning teams are made and winning teams are found, or losing teams are found out.
Yeah, that's a good point of like, I mean, you only have to be good in MLS for a little stretch of time. So if we can get some guys coming back from injury at the right moment and playing together, I think that could be really big for this team. Next question comes from Alex Rubio. He says, if you were Rodolfo Borrell, besides center back, which maybe arguably we don't need to strengthen at center back now, but where would you strengthen the team and why? I think there's probably a few spots you can name. I would say, especially if Alex Ring doesn't stick around after this season, I would say a box-to-box midfielder. I could also argue, maybe this is weird to say, but at fullback, I feel like we could be better at fullback. Do either of you have any other positions where you think they should definitely focus on strengthening?
I mean, we just said a lot of good things about Ethan Finley, but he's also like not a young guy and getting older. Like I still feel like there's help on the wing, and especially with how Emiliano Rigoni is not developed. I mean, obviously the best help would be for Emiliano Rigoni to like turn into the player that he's like the DP that he's being compensated before, but like I'm sort of losing hope on that. So I would say like the wing is another spot where Austin needs some help.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think down the flanks, you see the impact when John Gallagher is not in, and John Gallagher has been the revelation of this season, MLS All-Star, rightfully so. Congrats to him. But you see the impact, the loss of dynamic movement that happens up one side of the flank, and the lack of depth in wide play and wingers. The emergence of Ethan Finley, re-emergence of Ethan Finley, putting his summer form, matching, I think, almost exceeding his summer form from last year, where he kicked on from the Colorado game and really became a factor, working himself in until the arrival of Emi Rigoni. I think getting goal-scoring wingers, that is something that you need to take the goal-scoring pressure off of Sebastian Driussi. Sebastian Driussi, 6 goals, 3 assists by his standards. That is not the Sebastian that we saw last year. It's amazing because if you were to ask a team like Chicago, if you were to ask some of the other teams languishing in Major League Soccer, they'd be like, oh my gosh, our DP is getting that. All right, we'll take that. But it's Driussi. It's because he can do what he can do. And he's a double-digit goal scorer. Fagundes not having the year he had last year. So getting a goal-scoring winger for Austin FC that can complement Ethan Finley, that can give flexibility if now we've seen Diego fill in for Sebastian at the number 10 position. I think that would bode well for the team, give more balance, helps you rotate a bit more with Ethan getting older. And I like I said, I'll repeat myself in saying down the back, the injuries to the likes of a Jean Kolmanich, I think Adam Lundqvist kind of losing form a bit. I go back to that Minnesota United game. He was doing well. The game against Seattle, some of the home games, I think the Colorado game where he got the assist, he was finding confidence. But when you're a newer player to a team, all it takes is one moment because of the newness of a team, the newness of getting used to playing for a different fan base. All it takes is one moment to kind of erode your confidence. And I think we've kind of seen a bit of an erosion from his confidence. But in the same breath, all it takes is one quality game against a good opponent to bring that confidence back.
Next question comes from Marcelo Teson, and he says, who are your picks for the first Efecito player without a first team contract to get one in the coming years?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I can tell you who I'm really glad to see that's gotten first team minutes. I've been a big fan of Valentino Noel. I think that's a player who I'd like to see continue get first team minutes, especially once MLS play gets back. I think he's a player that you can get his feet wet in road games, continue to get him in the rotation. He can play anywhere along the front line. He can play as the false 9, although I like him in that wide position, kind of can play in the pocket, which very much in the Josh Wolf form. A player that I'm surprised didn't get right in the mix, David Rodriguez. I thought he's one of the best players in preseason. I think that those two should get more minutes, and I hope they do because that'll connect the pipeline from first team to second team and hopefully create more doors and openings for some of the academy players.
Yeah, the complicated thing with those guys is because they're not on first team contracts, there's a cap to how much they can actually play in games, which is really frustrating to say that pretty much all of the second team players who are like might be ready for first team minutes are the ones who we aren't allowed to play in that many first team games. Jeremiah, who would your pick be?
Oh, I don't have anything to add beyond that. I'll just leave it. Do you have somebody?
I'll say I think I've said this on the show before that people kind of get fixated with the age of our first team players, and they think as soon as someone turns 30 that they're worthless and they shouldn't be signed anymore. I think that gets overplayed. Where I think age does matter more is with these second team guys. And so a guy like Valentino Noel, as good as he's been, he's like 23, 24 years old. And so he is more or less the player he's going to be. And so my hopes are more with these younger guys, Micah Burton, Brian Arellano, and even more so with Irvin Torres, a kid 15 years old playing professional minutes right now and looking like he fits in. And so those are the guys I'm really excited about. And then I think honorable mention would be a guy like Steve Louis-Jean, a young Haitian kid. I think he's 18. And just I think those young guys, that is going to be where the proof of concept of this academy system comes through. If we can start promoting guys like that into the first team.
Yeah, and my dream of having Saul Montefiore be that guy is over now that there are no cups left, which I think is the only way that he was ever going to get any moment with that. Another question from Nicole Blair, which is, in my opinion, Ring's been the most valuable designated player this season, a solid center back replacement. We talked a little bit about Rigoni, and Driussi appears absent or frustrated on the field to me. Our best stretch is when he was injured. So I would like to what do you read into that? I've seen a lot of this online commentary, Michael, about Driussi not seeming up for the captain's band or seeming frustrated or not living up to expectations. I'm interested in your reaction to those thoughts.
I think the weight of expectation, doesn't matter who he is, it's going to affect any player. It's very different when you're Sebastian Driussi of 2022 and you can just go and play. But we're seeing a Sebastian Driussi that isn't just going and playing, but he is the one that everyone's still looking to, and with greater expectation and greater weight because he's got the captaincy on his arm, and that'll affect anyone. I know the teams that I've captained in my career, there was a bit of a transition process, and it would sometimes take me half a season to just say, okay, you're the captain and you don't have to change how you play. It just means that there's a leadership element, there's a sign of respect, and there's trust and responsibility that's placed in your arm. You are not the only one. And I think that, I hope at least, that's with this break coming and with games coming and beyond this year, I hope we see a more settled Sebastian Driussi. I think that the injuries, that's a player who hasn't really had to deal with injuries from 2021 and last year. His consistency, his health was much to our benefit. He's a player that gets kicked a lot and fouled a lot. I think whenever you get an MVP caliber season, which I still, yes, Hani Mukhtar won, but I still don't know how you can't reward a guy who did it from day one in the season and not give him MVP. I know goals count for something in Major League Soccer. I've seen it with previous winners who turned it out at the right moment. That is my soapbox protest against the MVP from last year, and I'll stop right there. But it's so hard to, when everyone, I mean, there's a target on your back. Teams have had a season of adjusting for Driussi. I think the change in tactics this year, I think Driussi is not just playing as a midfielder, he's playing as an out-and-out attacking midfielder. We switched from a back three to a back four, and that affects where you get the ball. I think this season, I've seen Sebastian Driussi in the first half of the season picking up the ball deeper. Now, when he's been scoring goals, whenever you pick up the ball deeper, you're not getting in the box as much because there's work you have to do on both sides of the ball. Sebastian Driussi at his best is maybe dropping deep to get a touch or two, but arriving in the box. When he scored goals, you look at the Minnesota United game, it's letting the Danny Pereira's, it's letting the other players around him, Diego Fagundes is getting back to form. That's a domino effect that impacts Sebastian's play. Diego not being in sync and in concert as much as he was this year, I think that's what's impacted Sebastian and some of the other players around him taking a while to get back.
And then the second half of that question was essentially saying, like, if Ring does leave, what characteristics would you want to see in a new DP, or like what kind of personality or position would you want to see? And I personally, if Alex Ring does stick around, I would like for it to be in a non-designated player role, just because of primarily his age, 32 now. So I think that combined with his kind of performance over the last couple of years, I think we could probably get more out of a DP spot. And if he sticks around, I would like for it to be in that TAM era, not like TAM zone. As far as what I'd like to see, I mean, I would like to essentially replace Alex Ring, whether he's here or not, and get one of those, like an 8 for lack of a better word, but like a guy who's can contribute to the attack enough to be creative going forward, contribute defensively, and kind of be that real box to box midfielder. And I think of guys like some of the guys on Kansas City's team, guys like Houston's midfield has some guys like this, where just these real game changers in the middle of the park there. And I feel like Austin has several players who are really gifted in certain areas, but not as much in other. And it just feels a little bit out of balance sometimes. So that would be my pick as far as, like, if specifically for a Ring replacement, I would legitimately straight up replace Ring.
Yeah, I look at there's different mechanisms that you can go down, and that's why I think TAM is there to buy down players, to get them to fit within the box and the metrics, so you can keep them if you decide to. But if you are to get rid of Alex Ring, I agree with you that you got to go younger, and it also depends on what sort of formation Josh Wolf wants to play. We've seen that pairing between Owen Wolf and Danny Pereira, going with the youth movement, that takes time. There's going to be some growing pains. There have been growing pains. Both players are internationals right now. And there's been talk of Owen Wolf potentially making a move to Europe. That may happen at the end of the season. It may happen at some point next year. It may happen down the road. So what if Owen Wolf, and question for you guys, if Owen Wolf were to get picked up by a club from Europe, do you still pass on Alex Ring? Do you still cash in on him? Or are you now forced to keep him?
I mean, you have to replace him. Like, so, and I if I'm not mistaken, I think his contract situation would be like an option year this off season. And so what I would like to do, this is almost certainly not what Alex Ring wants to do. I would want to not pick up his option and negotiate a new contract for a lower number, open up some more cap space, bring in that game changer, which Owen Wolf is young, promising, but he's not that guy now. And so I would welcome that. Like sell Owen for some money, use that money plus some extra ring cap space to bring in a game changer in that spot. Not somebody who's going to be good in 2 years, but somebody who's great now.
Oh,
all right. Well, let's.
Jeremiah,
I'm ready. I've got like 2 dumb questions that we have at the end that I've been waiting to ask you the whole time. So like I'm excited about this part of the interview. This comes from our favorite ATX Bergkamp lover 6969420, who's also got the best username, and this is going to be for you, Michael, because like people here, our talents are like there all the time. What hidden talent do you have, and do you want to display it on video right now?
I can't display it because I don't have the equipment that I used to have, but I used to write and produce music.
No way.
So, yeah, I can do that. And
what kind of music?
Anything from R&B to acoustics. So my background in school was in math, and I just kind of through my college roommate, Marcus Tracy, who he was a gifted athlete, Herman Trophy Award winner, played in Denmark. One of our bonds was through music, and he had me sit down and just kind of listen to songs and put words and lyrics to them. And so at the start of our careers, for the first 4 years, we would make music together, and there are actually some songs out there on the interweb. I don't know if you want to listen to them, but making music would be one of them.
I have some of those too. People ask where they can listen to my music. I'm like, I'm not telling you that.
Yeah, no.
I'll tell you where some of it is, but I'm not telling you where all of it is.
Yeah.
One of the other questions from ATX Bergkamp Lover 6969420 is, which non-MLS teams do you hate the most and why?
And I feel like you should have personal experience, right? Like you've got somebody that did you wrong.
Well, I think my disdain for certain teams are because of certain players who shall remain anonymous, maybe for the After Dark Pod. You just have certain, just have people that you have run-ins with that you're like, gosh, I can't stand this guy on the field. From my time I go by just rivalries. I'm a big rivalry guy. That just stays with you, and you don't realize how much that's embedded in your blood until you retire, and you're like, I still don't like those guys. But I go back to the Chivas days, man. I still have a grudge against the LA Galaxy. I hate to say it, but those were our rivals, and they're
easy to hate.
They were FC Hollywood at the time. David Beckham, Landon Donovan, Robbie Keane. It just went on. They got Zlatan after that. So I would say LA Galaxy. That is a team that I still am like, oh. And then from my time with the Philadelphia Union, those pesky New York Red Bulls, or Red Bull New York, whichever way you want to say it, man. It felt like it felt like that Red Bull money always got you. They were doing what Inter Miami's doing now. We're acting like it's the first time we've seen, oh my gosh, not to the caliber of Messi, but oh my gosh, they're getting DP caliber players. Red Bull were doing that back in 2010. Rafa Marquez, Thierry Henry, Tim, like, are you serious right now? At the time, that was what I was saying, player for Union. Like, are you serious right now? We used to beat these guys. Now, overnight, they are perennial, supporter shields winners because they have one of the best strikers and best attackers.
Now I have to mark Thierry Henry.
Yeah. Wait, bring the other guy back they had before that was about to retire. I like him better. So those are some teams. I'd say I can't think of any other teams.
You're talking about the Galaxy. Like I've always, my first soccer love was Barca, and I'm not really a Barca fan now, but still hate Real Madrid. And I've always been like kind of the underdog fan, and so I've never been able to like Real Madrid or like PSG, like the team that's just always going to spend a ton of money. And that like Barca kind of became that more, and which is why I won't call myself a fan of them anymore. But talking about like LA Galaxy, like I was never able to like cheer for the Galaxy at all.
Yeah, no, one of the hardest pills to swallow was, you get traded, and as soon as I got traded, they went on their runs of MLS Cups. And so MLS Cup was just a foregone conclusion that most likely it was going to be held in LA at the Galaxy's home turf. So you're there, you get invited to go do a league appearance, and now you're standing in front of people that, would boo you as a player, and they still booed you for the appearance. So just as you don't forget, fans don't forget either.
All right. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up now. Michael Lahoud, thanks so much for joining us. Let our listeners know where they can find you. Anything else you want to promote? Go for it.
Yeah, you can continue to tune in. If you haven't, tune in to Verde Lights. It airs every game day just before kickoff. It's kind of become our new pregame show with Adrian Healy and I. You can find it on KXAN or the CW locally in Austin. Yes, linear TV still has a place in this world, forever linear. And if not Austin, you can find me on two things. I'll be doing college soccer with ESPN this year, both UT women's soccer on LHN Network. I think it's the last year for that. So
probably so, yeah.
And you can also find me doing more college soccer ACC Network, going back to where it all started for me. Went to Wake Forest, so go Deeks as well. And last but not least, I'll be continuing to do some more work with CBS Sports. Really excited to grow that relationship. Morning footy, box to box, and there's going to be some interesting new announcements coming around the corner. Can't tell you about them yet, but keep your eyes peeled. And also follow me on social media, on Twitter, at Mike Lahoud, on Instagram, at Mike Lahoud, and on anything else you can think of, probably at Mike Lahoud.
All right. Well, we'll be looking forward to those announcements. We'll be looking forward to following you and seeing the rest of your work. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. This was a blast, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank you both. Always available to do it. Both of you are awesome.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. Cheers.
All right. We want to thank Michael Lahoud one more time. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us online at LViajero87 and jbentley_ATX on Twitter, and then Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Sign up for the Patreon. We'll thank all the Patreon members again for providing our questions for our segment with Michael. And then visit the Striker, where you can get a 30% discount with the code MoonTower23 with a capital M. Jeremiah, what should folks look out for there?
Well, now that Austin FC's got a little bit of break, Moon Towers, the Striker is doing extensive coverage of both the ongoing Leagues Cup tournament and the 2023 Women's World Cup previews and matches. So they are here for your soccer all around the world. So be sure to check that out on thestriker.com.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week. We do not have a game to recap. We will not have a game to preview. So hopefully we've got a few irons in the fire working on some interviews. So hopefully we'll have an exciting interview for you guys. But until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente, oh my God.